Hi, dear listener. Welcome to the eighth episode of the Empathy Explorers podcast. Today, my guest is from Germany. His name is Christian Korff. He's a UX manager at ePages and formerly worked for software development projects in the aviation industry. Christian, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Ruud. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm really curious about your questions and hope we have a great conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really glad that we crossed paths on Twitter, and I have a lot of questions about your career path, and I just want to dive straight into it, if I might say so, because looking at your career. How does someone transform from working for projects in the aviation industry to a UX manager? And are there similarities, or is it relatable in some sense?
Yeah, it's definitely relatable to start with that. So my journey started actually at university, where I got into the whole user-centered design field by studying human factors. So human factors, I like to call it like the scientific umbrella, which is covering UX, but also other fields like ergonomics and everything where humans are involved in a machine interaction or any interaction with systems and so on. And I actually specialized there at university, my master degree on aviation psychology and especially like aircraft systems and how pilots or other aircraft personnel is actually collaborating with automated aircraft systems and so on. And then I started not directly after university, but a few years later working as a consultant for an engineering consulting firm, which was mostly in the aviation industry. And there I got then into projects where I was involved both in the system development of aircraft systems, but also in the certification. And this is the really important part, I think, in aviation when it comes to human factors, UX, usability, and so on, that aircraft systems need to be safe. This is like the most important thing, because if they're not safe, and the consequences out of that would always be catastrophic, or not always, but very often. So if an aircraft crashes, everyone knows then what happens. So usability or UX has a completely different focus there. It's about safety. It's not about how can we satisfy the user better and how can we, I don't know, grow our conversion rate and so on, like we have it maybe in more e-commerce or software field. But it's really about how can we ensure that the aircraft and the people controlling the aircraft can control the safety so that it doesn't come to any incidents. And there was then doing actually usability testing, kind of just in a very large scale. So we had to do campaigns where we really went into the flight simulator with a whole flight crew, like with pilots and other aircraft personnel, and we were flying in the simulator and observing the users how they use the systems, and we had to take care that they perform all let's say missions or mission artifacts completely, that they don't make any errors. And if they made an error, then we always afterwards had to like analyze each error. What would have happened in a real aircraft if we would not have been in a simulator environment? What would have happened if they had combined certain errors and so on? And based on that, then the judgment is made if the system from a human-machine interaction perspective is safe or not. In the end, if you
like those use testings really have a high risk element in it involved, and I like that you said for a business website, when the conversion rate is up or down with testing, that's generally what I'm doing. And like that there is a certain type of risk. A business might get a less revenue or something, but there's not the risk of losing lives because they are not able to make a sale. Did you also feel that kind of weight for when you tested it, or?
Yeah, I mean, I was still in a, let's say, comfortable position from the responsibility wise because I was working as a consultant. And as a consultant, I'm not responsible for the safety. I'm just giving advices to the aircraft manufacturer how to make the system maybe better. So it was not that afterwards I had to sign something, and I don't know, like I think we could see it a very good thing, which was in the media a lot in the last years, was the Boeing 737 Max, disasters, which were a lot related to certification because the certification was not done properly, and they didn't figure out the not safe parts of the system. And I was not the one who signed for the safety afterwards as a consultant. So I'm not like a Boeing engineer now who.
Did you do testing for that specific aircraft?
No. I was not involved in any of that. Fortunately. No, but like if you look now, I think there are still legal processes in the States, I guess, against certain Boeing engineers, or at least I guess so. So it was never that I thought, okay, if I sign now here, it's like and then something happens afterwards, I will be made responsible for that. Never that. So I was more in the position of giving advices, like improve maybe this part of the software, or take care that this system is working properly, and so on. And therefore, I was quite relaxed when I did that. But of course, I was working together with people from the aircraft manufacturer who afterwards really also had to take the responsibility, because this is, if you certify a system, not only in aviation, also in, I don't know, if you have nuclear power plants or so, it's in the end the same thing, because if something happens, it has like catastrophic consequences. So there need to be people who in the end take the responsibility for what they develop. And I mean, I guess they get paid quite a lot to take this risk. And this is then what you would say a career in such a field as an engineer, also as a human factors engineer. Of course, it's also, and this is the other thing, I could never have done what I did if I had not studied human factors. So it's not like you go through a 6-month boot camp of UX and then you go into aircraft human factors. This would not work. You really need to know the psychological principles which are laying behind it to even evaluate the human errors and so on you see in a testing environment. So the people working there and doing this are very experienced and very highly trained by universities and so on, to be actually able to take this risk and to judge about the systems and to take this responsibility as well. Yes.
And you also did something in aviation. What did you say? Also learned extra in school, right? Or
in human factors, which is generally very broad. So it's very there's a huge part of automotive systems. So like, I don't know, automations in cars, for example, like Tesla's autopilot. Then there's the UX part, which is more about really, I don't know, software, agile software development and interaction design. And then there's the ergonomic part, which is a lot about physical ergonomics, like how should you sit at work on your desk and so on. How should the lighting be so that you're not tired after a while and so on. And then there's this whole aircraft or aviation and also space part in this, where human machine interaction becomes especially important because of the risks. But also because the people working in these areas, but also us astronauts at the ISS, for example, they work under very, let's say, stressful situations. Not always, but often, especially like pilots when it comes to bad weather and they have to make decisions in a very short time frame. They always have to work in pairs, so in two, so they have to collaborate perfectly with each other. They have hierarchies though. So if now the second pilot is detecting an error of the first pilot, he has to be able to tell him that, even though in the hierarchy the other one is higher, so he's his boss kind of. And all these things are influencing the human-machine interaction, like how the pilots work with the aircraft systems. And this is, for me, it was a very interesting part, and this is also why I specialized in my master degree in this, and about the artificial horizon. This is this display in the aircraft where you see in which pitch or bank angle your aircraft is at the moment, especially when you're flying in the clouds and you cannot see the horizon outside of the window.
Is that
and
that
yeah, this
monitor?
actually,
Is that little monitor that you
yeah,
see sometimes?
it's this display. Yeah, actually, you can see it everywhere. Also, in every flight simulator, you have it. It's like usually a brown horizon line, or like the bottom part is brown and the upper part is blue for the sky, and then in the middle is like a yellow symbol which should show the aircraft. Exactly about that. And I was also like in a mock-up flight simulator at university and did some quantitative research with test persons, like how they react to different kinds of this display. So like different dynamics and so on. And it was very interesting. And so I thought also like, okay, I will maybe one day go this way and work in aviation and do this, because it is a very complex field, but it's very, very interesting. Yeah, as you can see, I mean, the systems are also hard, complex. There's also a lot of physical components then involved, like, I don't know, controlling sticks and so on, because the whole system is designed for being an aircraft, and it's not a computer software which runs on every laptop and so on.
Is it something that you, as a kid, always looked up to? Like, were you always interested in planes and aircraft?
No, actually not. I mean, who's not interested in an airplane as a kid? Like if it flies above you, you say, "Oh, an airplane," or so, and it's always exciting to fly into vacation or so. But no, actually not. I was interested in technical stuff, I guess, and so like in school, I thought, okay, engineering could be something I could study. But I was also a lot interested in psychology always. And in Germany, it's quite hard to enter psychology at university if you get out of high school. So either you have really good grades in high school, and it's easy, you can study whatever you want. But for psychology, you really need to be one of the best to enter university for psychology. And I wasn't, so I decided for engineering. And actually, I have a bachelor degree in engineering in actually shipbuilding and like all the sea engineering, so also like platforms, everything what can swim on water, which was okay, but I mostly studied that, or like I finished this only to enter the human factors master, which I found out about at university while I was studying my first semester. I found out, oh, there's this master degree which is combining psychology and engineering. So I will just finish my bachelor because I needed to enter the master. So yeah, the real decision for this human-machine interaction thing came actually when I was at university already.
Oh.
And then inside the master, the interest for aircrafts and also spacecrafts and so on came, and especially like the human-machine interactions happened there.
What I found interesting was that my belief from what I saw on your profile, like I worked in human factors, I was thinking about the passengers and not really about like the pilots or the staff that works with aircraft or fixes the aircraft or makes all the panels for it. One question that came up was like, can you give me an example of what kind of test that you actually had to do? What were you testing in such a flight simulator? Or is that all under restrict?
Yeah, I need to be careful a bit what I say. Well, generally, what you do in the flight simulator is you simulate usually unnormal conditions, or like not maybe not unnormal conditions, but conditions which don't happen every day in a pilot's life, but maybe happen once or twice, like bad weather conditions, for example, or like maybe sudden changes in the flight plan. So maybe an airport need to be closed on short notice while you are already in the landing process, and you need to deviate from your plan and need to replan and fly somewhere else, for example, or have a round. I mean, maybe a lot of people already experience that, to have like a how do you say, when you cannot land and you're like nearly landing, but the weather conditions are too bad, and then the wind is changing and so on, and the pilots have to restart and like fly another round and so on. So these are usually situations where those errors happen, which have those catastrophic consequences. I mean, the same for the Boeing 737 MAX again. They had sensor errors, and because of the sensor errors, the whole system worked not in the proper way, and the pilots then had to work with it to deactivate the system or to work against it and so on. And they were not able to, because they had too much to deal with, while the system was too heavy for them to work against it, and then they crashed. And these are situations you usually also simulate then in a simulator. Like, you don't fly with best weather conditions from A to B. I mean, of course, you also test that, but the interesting part is when there's actually action happening, where pilots have to make decisions, where they have to communicate with themselves, but also with the ground, while they are working in the system, like planning, because you have like, I mean, you have the autopilot, but it has to be programmed. You have to tell the autopilot, okay, where do we fly actually? There are a lot of shortcuts which you have to know in the system to be able to work it. Then you have a lot of checklists as a pilot where you have to go through always again and again. So it's also repetitive work. And these are always things where problems can occur. You use the wrong checklist, you forget a checklist item, and so on. And this is what you actually also then look at in the simulator. And maybe to say also this, a certification of an aircraft system is not only done on this human machine interaction perspective, but on a lot of different ones, also on a technical level. So of course, we are sitting with them in the simulator, trying to simulate and to observe situations which can occur in real life. But maybe before already, the engineers were also sitting in the simulator. We're just testing if all the systems are working properly and so on. So you have a lot of levels on which an aircraft is certified and accepted in the end, so that it's able to fly in normal passenger traffic and so on. That's allowed to transport it. It's the same with cars in the end, just that cars have a lower risk. But for cars, you have then not special trained people who are controlling it, but just people with a driving license. So also there you have to have these certification processes. In the end, it's nothing else.
If you look at those years working as a consultant for that industry, what is the biggest takeaway that you crossed over to your role right now? And do you have something like that really fits that experience from all those years?
Well, I would say so the methods you use in a flight simulator, for example, and the how to analyze actually certain observations you make and what conclusions you draw out of it are the same. And like now I'm working in really agile web software development. But basically, I can make the same observations. If I do a user test now with any user in front of a computer who is working with my software, I do exactly the same than I did in the past in the flight simulator. I observe, I can note down the errors. What I'm able now, and I think this has helped me with this experience, I really can analyze the errors which are made. I can not just see them and say, okay, maybe we have to do something here, but I'm able to say, okay, why did the user made this error in this moment? Because I can maybe see what was in the head, so like the psychological things which were maybe wrong in this moment, the mental model and so on. And I think this is also when it helps a lot what I did at university, this psychological part of human machine interaction, to really understand what is a mental model a user has in his head, and why is he clicking this button and not the other one, even though the other one was right, or why is the user not finding the button, to be then able to see what can we actually do to make it better. Because user testing and seeing that a system is not perfect is one thing, but to also draw the right conclusions out of it is the other thing in the end.
I was thinking about the same thing, that you would say something like that, because when I look at user testing and we see like maybe there's an error, but only 1% of the people actually, or maybe less than 1% has that error in their path to a certain conversion rate or something. We might think like, okay, well, it's not that important. We can focus on like the bigger problems and such, and maybe you're able to much more clearly define like what is the reason behind the error, and maybe the reason behind the error that only 1% has is much bigger than the overall thing that we need to fix, or something that might be a really simple fix, but the one that only 1% gets is much deeper light into the software that we created. So maybe we need to really focus on that. But
yeah, well, I mean, I also need to be careful always, because of course not every, I mean, and in the flight simulator, every error which happened only once with one pilot maybe, could have had in real world catastrophic consequences with hundreds of dead people. If I'm in a user test and 1 out of 10 users or so is making a mistake, I shouldn't maybe prioritize this over the other ones, even though I know that it's a problem. And this is the difference, I think. The prioritization is a different one. In aircrafts, every error is important, even if it's only made by one. In normal everyday use software environments, I think we really should prioritize in a way that we really fix the important errors, which are the ones which are made by more users. So it's also, I mean, we have always to prioritize, but I think, yeah, the amount of people making an error is always a good thing in normal user testing of software. Yeah. So
okay,
1%, 1%, I would not give too much priority. If I don't have the resources, the development resources, I leave it be.
It's not like you're fixing like every error needs to be resolved.
You cannot do that. I mean, it's impossible.
Okay. So like reverting back a bit to probably the first question that I asked, how do you transfer from like such a specific part in like testing and the specific industry, specific tasks and role that you have to a UX manager?
Yeah, well, maybe the UX manager, I mean, this is just the title I have. But I think that the biggest difference is the field I work. So I worked in aviation, and now I work in e-commerce software development, and this is the important thing. If it's to call human factors consultant in the past and now UX manager, doesn't matter so much. I think I could also be called a UX designer. I could also be called, I don't know, something else like usability expert or whatever. But the product I'm working on, this changed a lot. And actually, so there was a different part of my story before I got into the role I am now, but also before I got into the role I was before in aviation, which was let's say 1 or 2 years after university. where I didn't went straight into a job, but instead moved to Italy because I was like, I'm stuck here in Germany. I mean, I finished my master degree, but I need to see another part of the world, maybe learn a new language and so on. So I just moved away from Germany and from all job opportunities I had actually into a country, Italy, where it's actually not so easy to get a job in anything related to tech, engineering, and so on, because Italy is, I mean, the economy there is weaker than, for example, in Germany, and they have much less technical industry. There is no industry, and also the tech scene and software development scene is still quite small there. So there are not many open positions, but still I moved there and did some stuff here and there. I was a photographer and worked as a tourist guide and whatever, everything what paid the bills in the end. But doing this, I figured out, okay, this cannot go on forever. So I need to see how I can use actually my skills from university in a way that I actually can do a proper job, which is really bringing the money in. So I actually started my own business. I created an online shop, and I imported olive oil from Italy to Germany to sell it. So I basically created my own case study also for my portfolio and so on. It was very useful. I created this whole website and online shop on my own. I just got into web design, which I hadn't done before, but that was it, and used my UX skills to actually create a proper website, storytelling, everything about olive oil. And started selling olive oil. It was more or less successful, more or less than more, but it actually gave me the reference to find a real job. And from there, I got then back into aviation. Even though I only sold olive oil, I could show, and this is maybe also a good message I like to give. I could show, like, whatever you do, like after university, like, I don't know, create a website, you create your own business, even though if it's successful or not, doesn't matter, but it will help you afterwards to find a real job, like a serious job, because people see that you're actually independent and able to solve problems yourself. And I think this is the most important part. It's not so important what it is. It's more important that you do something and not just sit around and watch Netflix or so. And I did that. And I got this consultant job. I moved back to Germany for it and did this until actually Corona came, more or less, a year ago it was. And the aviation industry in general got into problems and is still in problems, which caused that there were no projects anymore for me as a consultant, at least not in this part. And I was then there without a project, or even forced into projects which had not much to do anymore with human machine interaction, human factors, or UX, but just stuff which was there. But I didn't want to do that, of course. I wanted to work further in UX. So I decided actually to leave the whole field of being a consultant, but also working in aviation, because I didn't see any future for me there, especially not in the pandemic view anymore. So I decided, okay, I will go back to real software, or I want real website, web software development again, like I did with my online shop, but then of course in a more serious way. And I started looking for jobs in the tech industry, and found then this role where I'm in now, and I applied and they took me. And since September last year, I'm now a UX manager at ePages, and we are developing now e-commerce software, which is much less complex than an aircraft system, but at the same time, I can use all my knowledge from my own olive oil shop and apply it there, because this is what I did before I went into aviation. Yeah.
That's quite a story. Wow, from Italy to
I mean,
like, wow.
It's a bit it's funny, but and I see like these huge differences, and a lot of people asking me about, like, why aviation and now e-commerce. It's like, whoa, but actually I don't see it as such a big difference. I see the same problems. It's just that the consequences are different. But in the end, I mean, I still have to work in a complex system environment. I mean, I have to work with APIs, I have to work with databases and so on. Of course, I don't need to understand everything, but at least to have a proper conversation with the developer, I need to be able. So I don't see that big difference between an e-commerce software and an aircraft system.
It might just be from an outsider's perspective, not from
Yeah,
your
from an
perspective.
outsider's perspective, of course. And I think I mean, you meet UX people everywhere who would never think of UX when they sit in an aircraft. I mean, that's pure engineering. But without the UX and the usability, the aircraft would get into problems. So in the end, and this is also why I love to say, like, UX is everywhere. It's not just software which you can see on your computer screen. UX is everywhere. And there's also physical UX. Like if you drive a car, it's the same thing that we do all the time in our software companies and so on.
A curious question from my side then, because I think that's the biggest takeaway from my perspective so far as well, that it's just more than creating the websites and the web shops and like online software and such. Do you feel like the user experience part in those industries is as evolved or more or less evolved than the what we think as the regular UX industry for those websites and such?
I think it depends. Which is the best answer for UX designer always, I learned. No, it really depends on what area exactly you're working. So yeah, of course, we know all the agile software development world where UX at least is written on everything, if it's really applied properly and if the UX resources are always available. It's a different question, but at least every CEO of a like modern tech company knows UX is important in this way or the other. In engineering and aviation and so on, it's a bit different because it is a very old industry and it's like huge enterprises which are doing. You don't have startups, or at least not a lot. You have some, but usually it's like big companies like Airbus, like Boeing and so on, where you of course are also confronted with the environment and company culture which is far away from what we maybe know from our software companies. So they are not agile. It's all very waterfall development, but also for the reason that the safety thing is there. You cannot release aircraft software every week new and put new updates. It's not possible. Like you do this every 3 years when the new version is also certified. So they cannot work completely agile. They do it partly, or they cannot. And therefore, also for UX, usability people working there, at least that was my experience, it's sometimes quite hard because you work not with software developers often, but with engineers, like really proper mechanical or aircraft engineers. And they have no idea what UX is. Like they don't learn it at university usually. It just doesn't matter for them. They have a really technical view. And they don't care so much about the user. Like, I don't know, at least the front-end developer, in my experience, is like very often very concerned about the user. I mean, maybe not everywhere, but at least this is the experience I made, especially with younger software developers. They are actually mostly quite, user focused. And engineers, in my experience, are less. So you really have to have fights there to actually explain your problem, because like they say, why the system is working technically, and then they say, yeah, but the user pressed the wrong button and then this happened, and they say, yeah, but he should not have pressed the button, and then you say, yeah, but he did, because in this situation that was for him the right thing to do, but in fact it was wrong. And it's very hard for them to accept that the human error is actually not caused by the human, but by the system, which gave him maybe a wrong hint and so on. So for me, it was also sometimes quite frustrating because it was quite, hard to actually have an impact and to really make them change something in the system because of a usability reason. So yeah, I would say there is a difference, but, and this is now why I said it depends in the beginning. It depends a bit what kind of system you're working on. If you have the aircraft cockpit, which is like the core where everything is controlled, you have a lot of research, as at least, where like whole departments are only doing user research, and they're sitting there with pilots and they're designing the system. So there actually, it is understood also because of past incidents, especially like 80s, 90s, a lot of aircraft crashes happened where actually usability issues were the cause. Since then, this got much better. But in the moment you go a bit back in the aircraft, away from the cockpit, more to systems which are more worked by not the pilots, but maybe other personnel. For example, in cargo airplanes, you have systems which are used to calculate the center of gravity of an aircraft, which is then used by the pilots to trim the aircraft in the proper way so that it flies as expected. And if you go to those systems, the focus is much less, because these systems are not directly connected to the aircraft control, but still they're important for the safety of flight. And in those areas, from my experience, it's a bit harder to really convince them that usability is an important thing. So yeah, but I mean, I don't want to say that aviation is not user focused. Definitely not. I think that it is, and it has to be, and everyone there is aware. It's just that the development process, which is not agile and so on, doesn't allow you to make quick fixes and to change the button color here and maybe the font size there. This is just not possible. You have to stick to a lot of norms. You have, which is also good because they also provide safety, and you have to, have a lot of patience because things take, and they take long, because you always have to climb up the ladder and change something in the requirements, and then it has to go all the way down until it's changed in the software, and it takes months sometimes.
It's for me it's a refreshing perspective on UX design, because there might be people that are not really maybe happy with their current job, but they really like cars, for instance, or they really like a certain I don't know, type of machinery or something. There are so many difficult industry, more specific industries, so to say, where it's also possible to work as a UX designer, or what type of role would fit there, researcher or something. That might perfectly be a fit for them, but they just don't see that when they're, for instance, I've never heard about people going from what I studied. I studied IT and media design, so it's a bachelor in, for instance, like just software development and the front end for that, and the user experience that comes with that. But if you want to shift, and you might have to take some extra classes, or maybe a whole new master's degree or something, but it is possible to work in those industries. And I found it really refreshing, and it might be really helpful for younger people as well, if they're like 16, 17 or something, and they still want to figure out what they want to do with their bachelor degree. They can still go to a specific industry.
Yeah, definitely. I think to really do this in aviation, you need to be interested in both engineering, also psychology. And if you are, this could be definitely a field for you, because there you have everything. You have physical engineering, like really like mechanics and stuff. You have software, and you have people who are trained, very highly trained pilots and so on. So you have also a lot of possibilities there, because your system has to have automations so that it's actually workable, but these automations have to be designed in a way that they support the human being using it and not replacing him and so on. So it's like it's very, very interesting also the principles which are laying behind. And the same is then for Tesla with the autopilot and people sleeping on the highway, and then there's a crash, and it's like, why was he sleeping? And then Tesla says he's not allowed to sleep, so it's his fault. And they say, yeah, but he was sleeping, so maybe he trusted the system too much, and the system was not able to fulfill this trust. And yeah, you always have to think about it, because just automating the system is not enough. You always need to think, what does this does to the human being who's sitting next to it and has to observe it and to be able to interact with it in case it's necessary. And this is a part which in software development, in agile software development for, I don't know, web software, we don't have usually, because it's like, yeah, we maybe automate things, but then just to make it easier for the human. And there are no consequences if the automation is failing. But in engineering fields, you should think about it. What is the human doing with this automation?
It's the only thing that I think is pretty difficult from that is that you, as you said, you have to have the logical part, like the engineering part, and the empathetic part, the human part. And most of the people are born or wired in one certain way. There are people that tend to be more logical, and people that tend to be more like social, empathetic, and like left brain, right brain way. And to need to have both in such a way must be really rare in such an industry, and that's maybe why they're so stuck with the old way, because they always thought like the logical way might be the way to act.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be great, for example, if engineering courses at universities would include the human factor inside their curriculum. So if you and make this also obligatory, and like not just as a voluntary course you can take, but you have mandatory wise that you have to learn also about what your engineering is actually doing to the human being who has to use it in the end. I think that would be very, very great to create this mindset inside the engineers. And then, of course, it needs the specialists who can support them in really applying these principles, these psychological principles during the development.
For your current role, you said like you ex-manager, yeah, you can call me, it's just the title, but it is the title you also have for your current bio and such. I was really wondering, do you feel there is a difference between it, or what specifies you as a UX manager instead of an UX designer or specialist? What are different key factors for you?
Yeah, I think, well, I think there's also like UX manager generally in the UX world is known as a manager of a UX team, who is then also involved in more like strategic decisions, and like higher inside the company to also like the seat at the table, how we call it, to sit there with maybe more higher management and make really strategic decisions about new features and all these things. And this is actually what I do, except that I'm not really managing a team. So I don't have a UX team below me or so, but I work very close with product management, or I'm part of product management. So the management part of my UX role is really taking part in roadmap decisions, also being part of discussions about where should the product go next, what should be the next features we implement, where do we want to go, on a broader perspective also, which I think UX designers are usually not. They're more like, okay, we want to develop this feature, So now do the research and do the design, and then it goes into development, while I'm more in this strategic part. But at the same time, as we don't have a UX team, I'm also responsible for interaction concepts. So we have UI designers, which are sitting with the developers. So I don't need to take care of the design system and how the button should look like and so on. So all this I'm not doing, but what I'm doing is doing interaction, like research, of course, and interaction concepts. So I don't know, if we create a new feature, then I create wireframes basically, and this is then my deliverable, which I hand over to the rest of my product management team, to the POs. I discuss it with them, and they bring it to the developers. And I'm also kind of a consultant inside my company for all aspects about UX. So if developers need to have a decision on, I don't know, how should the table be sorted by default or something, then it's always me they come to and ask me, and I can give them then the answer, or I tell them I have to do some research and then I give them the answer. So yeah, I'm doing more or less everything what in another company maybe is also distributed throughout different people. Which is, I mean, we have limited resources in UX. I'm not the only one. We're in 3, but yeah, we are basically doing a lot of things except the UI design. This is completely in UI expert hands.
So you work with 2 other UX designers, or?
Well, they're also called UX managers. So we are all like on the same level. We are all sitting on the same table and taking all part in these decisions, which actually is a very comfortable situation for that point, because like we have this big backup of UX when it comes to strategic decisions, which is great. Like if you discuss a roadmap, which features should come next, it's great to be in 3 UX people there, and really, yeah, also get the importance UX needs actually. And I think this is also this whole part that what I also always try to say, like, if not the whole company is backing UX up and understanding what UX is and that UX is important, UX will never be successful. And in the moment where UX is giving the seat at the table and is like taking into consideration when certain decisions are made, that's actually the point where UX can really be successful. But of course, then you also need to go into the details and see, okay, do we need a button here? Do we need a checkbox here or not? This is then the more detailed part of UX, which is also part of it.
That's what I discussed with Doug as well. The role of UX in the future, and that we're going to see people that are more up the ladder in companies there to make actual business decisions based on user experience background instead of a sales background or a developer's background or an engineering background or a marketing background, because all those teams have those roles already, but UX is still behind. I feel like at least that's what I'm noticing, maybe from our company as well, and what I see in other Dutch agencies, for instance.
Yeah, well, I really like, so Jared Spool once said, or somewhere in a tweet, and it's still going around, everyone is a designer. But he also specifies that not everyone is a good designer, but everyone is a designer. And I think he's right with that, because if I see how also my company, but also other companies, a product, the design of a product is basically what in the end is the product. Like also a developer is kind of designing the product because he's thinking about the technical solutions, writing the code. A product owner is making also concepts and designing certain interactions, because this is the job of a product owner also. And also a product manager is thinking about it. And even marketing and sales are kind of designers because they come with usually solutions. It doesn't mean that the solution is good, but they also tend to not think in problems. They say, we need now this feature, even though they have no idea if this feature is really needed. But so everyone is a designer. And I think if we also think about the future role of UX is, yes, we have to make them better designers. And this is a big part for UX to focus on, because not a UX designer cannot fix every UX issue in a company. We have to enable the others to think more in a user-focused way, and only then the whole product will have a good UX if everyone thinks about it. So this is also where I see a lot my role now, like really to enable others around me in having this user focus, but also like empowering and increasing the mindset for UX inside the company, because I think this is something which, at least in the long term, really creates value. Yeah.
I actually, one of my notes for this interview was also the quote from Jared Spool, everybody is a designer. And I added to it, they just don't know it yet. Because if we take your examples maybe a bit further, even like people that are hiring are designers because they hire the people, or they have a certain budget for like what is possible within a company. Marketing can have certain restrictions, or sales can have certain restrictions on a project, for instance, budget, or maybe like features or something that will restrict the possibilities for the best user experience possible within a certain project. So that was one thing. That I really want to talk with you about, because I feel like you have a certain role with the responsibilities right now that you have, and you are on the table, on the same table with those people. I feel user experience is not as taken seriously as it should yet, but it's as I talked with Doug, it's also still quite young. If you look at the years that it's called a user experience, or like experience designer, or that's maybe 10, 12 years or something, maybe less even. If you look at years, it's still a child. So we have to take it a step further ourselves and grow from there.
Definitely. Yeah, of course it's young, and it's much younger than software development in general is. But I think also it's just, in the end, this is what I mean. Yes, I'm called a UX manager. I could also be called differently. At least this is also what I see with people who are even longer in the UX field already. The names or the roles they had, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, maybe, were then web designer, or they were product designers, or they were, I don't know, something else. But in the end, they did UX. It just was not called user UX design. And I think we will see this shift in names again. I mean, we see it already, that people are now, I think, calling themselves again more product designers. I have the feeling. What I see a lot is UI UX designers, which I always find a bit awkward, which is also related to that I don't do UI. I really do UX, and that's it. And I guess in 5 years, we will all be called something completely different. It could happen. I don't know if the term UX, user experience, actually will change again, or if there will be a new thing coming up. But yeah, in the end, it is the user focus which we have to keep, and which was always there. Like, there were always people thinking about the users, and now it became a more professionalized thing, which you can learn in design school and so on. And this is also an interesting thing now, like how many as remote courses are popping up now. Google published also the first UX course thing. I'm very curious what this will make with the industry. Like, we have UX designers suddenly everywhere, but at the same time, of course, they come out of a boot camp. So they're like juniors, and they need to learn a lot, I guess, because after a 3-month boot camp or so, I would not be able to have the knowledge and to apply this. Like, we really need to take them by the hand and like, yeah, give them the experience they need afterwards to grow also in the UX field. And I think this is a big challenge also for the more senior UX designers, UX managers, and so on now, to get these new people coming more and more into the field of UX into the job and let them grow. And I think then we can also be able to give UX even more importance in the whole tech industry, because if there are more UX designers everywhere, and hopefully also more UX designers will get hired to do the job, so we can focus even more on specific parts of the software and so on. And then it will also get the importance it deserves, and people will grow, and people will also get into higher positions inside the companies to have this seat at the table and to be able to make the decisions which are necessary.
If I'm quoting Jared Spool again, one thing he also stated was like, if a company has less designers than developers, it's still an immature. But I think that's the case for like 99% of.
It's a very radical opinion, of course.
It's radical.
I have never seen a company where this actually would be true, that there are more or at least the same developers. But I think we also always need to see, and this is what I think, like back to these role names, like on Twitter, for example, everyone speaks about designers, like it's this design community on Twitter and so on. And I'm always wondering, who are these designers? What are they actually doing? Because design is everything and nothing. And I'm sometimes wondering if we should stop calling us designers, because as Jared will say, everyone's a designer, but more like talk about what we're actually doing. And maybe UX is a good term and UI is a good term. So we're both designers, but we do different things, or we should do different things, researcher, and so on. So yeah, so if Jared Spool says we need as many designers as developers, who is the designer then? Because at the same time, he says everyone is a designer.
Yeah, I think
we need to be careful, I think. And
his point was more so for like the importance of design. So
yeah, of course.
Once we have as much designers as developers on the table, we show that the design is as important in numbers, but maybe not. Yeah, I know that won't work like in the real world, but I found it a funny comparison.
No, and I think he's right. I mean, we need radical opinions also to actually make this change. Like, if we always just deal with what we have, we will never go forward. So we have to push for it. And then we also need to maybe wish for things which are maybe, or like seem to be unrealistic, but one day maybe they will be reality.
And what do you think about those courses you stated? What is your opinion about that?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I do online courses myself. Of course, I don't do UX beginner courses, so I don't actually know what they teach there completely. I do more like also like the Interaction Design Foundation, for example. I do like more the more senior courses, which are like more focusing on a specific field, like UX management, for example. So I'm still a bit unsure about it because I don't know anything about that. I would need to take a course to actually be able to say something about it, because I don't know what they teach. I just see that certain courses, at least when they're quite short, I doubt a bit that they actually can give you the knowledge you need to be successful. So I think at least you need 6 months or so with maybe not full-time, but at least part-time course, 20 hours per week or so to actually to gather the knowledge you need and to get the mindset you need to be afterwards able to do UX in a company. Because it's not just about knowing how to do a user test. It's also about why do you do a user test. It's about what you do with the results of a user test, and so on and so on and so on. And you also need to be aware of that UX is not just painting nice pictures, but it is much more. And yeah, I mean, I hope, especially like courses from Google and so on, which also connected to certificates, that there is something behind it which actually makes them valid. And I hope really that the people coming from there will be good designers, or will be good UX designers. Yeah, but I think, yeah, we will see in the next years how this will turn out. I mean, it's great. I mean, I work at the moment. I worked in the past also with people together who did other stuff before, and then they went to half a year of training, and now they're colleagues of mine. So I see also the advantages of that. Like, it offers also new opportunities to people to get into tech without learning to code, which is great, because if you want to work in tech, also if you look at the pandemic and so on, of course it's quite future proof. So why not? I mean, if you did before something else which was not really related to software development, and you don't want to, or you cannot learn to code because it's not what like it requires a lot of mathematic knowledge and stuff, then UX, of course, is a great thing. And if you're able to communicate, to work with people, to empathize with people, then I guess UX is a good career choice. And all these remote courses give you the opportunity for nearly no money to make this career switch. So generally, I think it's great.
Thank you. If I look at myself, I did I have a degree, but like 2 or 3 years ago, I was like, yeah, maybe I need to realign with what I'm doing right now, because I wasn't sure about the things I was doing, and I found the course from Jonah Toley. If you know him, he's also quite popular on Twitter, and I think he's a fantastic storyteller. And I did his course on the platform called Skillshare, and I don't want to endorse people to go there, but his course was so valuable to me, also to get the things back into your brain, but also a different way of storytelling about the user experience. And I learned way more things than I could have than I have done in those 4 years. But I have to say, if I did not have those 4 years of experience with school, it would be much harder for me to understand it in one take, for instance. So the course was like around 12 hours or something. I think if you only do that and then apply for a job, that would never work. For me, it was like refreshing, and in 12 hours I learned a lot of new things, and I could immediately implement it in my work because I had a job at a company where I still work. So I was able to put it into practice immediately, and then it stuck with me. I think that's the problem from those small courses and boot camps, that there is they teach you maybe how to do it, but if you don't get a job and you're not able to put it into practice with projects or people that you can research, then you'll never implement it, and after a year your all your learnings are gone.
Yeah. No, definitely. And I think I actually I don't follow the market of UX courses and so on so much, but on Twitter I sometimes see that people are also complaining about, especially these super short courses, which pretend to give you everything you need to know to be a UX designer, and then it takes a week or so. So it's like, for me, I would say it's a scam if they really promise you to make you a UX designer in a week or a month, because that cannot be true. I would say like a real course which is really enabling you needs at least, I would say, half a year maybe. And yeah, it needs to be connected to training projects which you have to do during the course. I don't know, case studies, Like you do the research, you design any product, an app or whatever, so that you actually see what it means to really apply this knowledge. And I think it's happening, like this whole mentoring thing, that usually like the good courses also provide you with a mentor or with different mentors who are actually coaching you throughout one-on-one meetings, where they give you also feedback and tell. And this, I think, is the real important part, tell from their experience, because the experience is what I rely a lot on my experience. Like what I do now, and that I'm able to make certain decisions in a quite fast way, I can do this only because I have the experience. And if you come new into the field and you have never worked in it, you don't have this experience, and you cannot make certain decisions out of nothing, because you don't know anything. But what you can do is learn from other people's experience. But therefore, of course, we need to communicate those experiences and tell people. Like, I don't know, I had a conversation also on Twitter with a junior UX designer, and he asked me if it's okay if he can deviate from the process. I said, yeah, of course it's okay to deviate from the process. I deviate all the time from the UX process. It's like I would not be able to always strictly follow the process. Like I would not meet any deadline. It would just not work. We have to deviate, and we have to improvise all the time. And this is, for example, what a theoretic course would never teach you. They would just teach you, okay, first do your research, then do the ideation, and so on and so on and so on. But that actually this is not set in stone, and that you always need to take care of the surrounding and of the context, is not taught then. And this is actually, I think, the biggest problem. This is what we can actually solve by sharing our experience to those juniors who are coming out of these remote courses and so on.
Thank you, Ed. I think that's a really powerful message for anyone who's in the UX field already and sharing their journey on like Twitter or YouTube
Exactly.
or socials. That is our, you might say, obligation to do that for others. Yeah, those were basically like most of the questions I really wanted to ask you. And I've prepared some rapid fire questions for you. I don't know if you are ready for them.
I hope so. I mean, I don't know what comes now, but we'll see.
Okay, I've got rapid fire questions. Just name the first thing that pops into your head, and I won't dive deeper into them, but just want to learn a bit more about you. The first question is, what is your number one book recommendation?
So the first thing which comes out of me now is not really relevant, I think, for junior designers or anything. It's a book which inspired me a few months ago, which was the book Forever Employable by Jeff Gothell, who's also a very popular person in the field of UX. It's a very short book, but actually it's about his 35th birthday, where he realized that if he stays a designer forever, he will never really grow. So he took his life in his own hands and created a community and gave his experience to others and so on, and started actually to create something he could control, to not always be dependent on your employer. And this inspired me a lot. And this is also why I started using Twitter more, because I also see that if we just go on doing UX design every day, maybe change the company from time to time, then we will get maybe also into problems, because new juniors are coming. Maybe they are cheaper for companies and so on, but they also do the job. So yeah, I think we really should see what we do with our career, also independent from employers and so on. So that book inspired me a lot in the last month.
Okay. What country would you visit first once everything is back to normal?
Yeah, I mean, I know which country it will be. It will be Italy. I mean, I told already I live there, and my wife is from there, and therefore part of the family. And we haven't seen them in almost a year now. So when this is over, I guess first country where we go is there, but more for family reasons. And then hopefully we will also be able to travel a bit further outside of Europe then.
I saw you were sharing some things on Twitter. That's why I also have a few questions about. What is your favorite plant to grow yourself?
My favorite plant to grow myself. Well, I think training or like lifelong learning, and this is what I truly believe in, is the path of growing. Like you learn with the knowledge you gather and so on. And of course the experience we make, but the experience comes with the job. So I thought about, okay, what else can I do apart from my job to grow? And this is why I do a lot of online courses. I read a lot of books to enlarge my skill set. And to get into topics which I haven't looked into it. To give you an example, accessibility. I have, honestly, I never really thought about accessibility until now, and I really see the need for accessibility, and it becomes, of course, also a more important topic, like in the public opinion and so on. And you see, like especially government websites and so on, have to be accessible now for a lot of things. And these things I want to discover because I see a lot of potential for myself there in knowing these things and applying this knowledge then in the future. So yeah, I do a lot of online courses. I said already, Interaction Design Association, where I do and I read books. And this is my path of growing apart from my job.
What is a saying you absolutely disagree with?
With what I disagree? Sorry, I didn't.
What is a saying you absolutely disagree with?
Saying. What is the saying I disagree with? That's a good question. I don't know. Nothing comes to my mind now. I'm sorry.
It's a hard question. I also asked.
It's a hard question, yeah.
Ash and Miro the same, and they also did not have an answer for it. It's because, to be honest, most people don't think about the things they disagree with.
Yeah, I can say a lot of things I agree with, but disagree, I don't know. I mean, of course, there are things I disagree with, but they are not the only one. That UX is not UI, for example, or I don't know. Yeah. Or that, I mean, I said it already. I think it's a problem that we always talk about us as designers, because this is not what we are. I mean, yes, of course we are designers, but we should specify more what kind of designers, what do we do actually in our job to be able also to have a discussion and to talk about what we are really doing. Maybe something like that, yeah.
Okay. And the last one, I saw you created this yourself once, or maybe multiple times, but what is your favorite sushi dish?
Oh, my favorite sushi dish. And now it's like, it's a bit embarrassing because I have no idea how those different sushi types are called, actually. I mean, I love them, but well, I really love the salmon Philadelphia rolls. They're great. And they're also quite easy to make at home because you can use smoked salmon, so you don't need to buy the super expensive fresh sushi salmon, and Philadelphia and rice and some nori sheets, and then you have your salmon Philadelphia roll.
Nice one, nice one. Okay, those were the questions. I also ask one question that is more related to the podcast itself, and that's what is a thing you like to explore more of?
Yeah, actually, one thing, like I just said already, accessibility is really something where I see the need that I have to enlarge my skill set and my knowledge. So this is what I will explore for sure in the near future. And another thing, which I did already a little bit in the past, but I really want to introduce this also in my company, is the whole thing of design sprints, co-creation, and so on. I know there are very different opinions inside also the design community, but I really think that it is a possibility to grow this UX and user-focused mindset inside a company. And I really want to try it out. I will facilitate a design sprint, I think, in 2 weeks with some developers in my company. And I'm really curious if this works out and if I can make the developers and other people around me actually to designers to do the research, to do the design, to draw the right conclusions out of what they see. And I really hope that this will help. But yeah, it's kind of an experiment for me now.
Please share your insights on Twitter. I love to know how that turned out.
Definitely, I will do that.
Okay. Yeah, those were the questions. We always end the episode with a question from the guest to the audience. Christian, have you thought about a question?
Yeah, actually, I mean, it needs now to be related to the topics we talked about, I guess. So I already, I thought about a lot of questions which are like inside me a lot. And one thing is, and maybe this fits also to this mindset thing, as like I would love to know from others how they are, like how do they evangelize UX inside their companies? Like what kind of tools, methods, whatever it is they use to spread UX inside the company to also the non-UX people and to evangelize it and to create this user-focused mindset throughout everyone.
I think that's a great question, and I hope we get some valuable answers for it so we can learn from it ourselves. That's about it. Christian, I really want to thank you for the conversation. One more thing, where can people find you on the internet?
Well, everywhere. Mostly on Twitter, I'm very active, as you said already. So just, I think it's Korff UX on Twitter. You can also otherwise go through my website. It's christiankorffux.com. Oh gosh, I always forget my URL. I think it's that. I'm sure you find me. If you Google my name and UX with it, then you get on the right channels, I guess, and then you find me. And yeah, maybe also like always, I love to talk to others and to share experience. So reach out to me. And I'm really happy also to have a one-on-one meeting with other designers and to talk about our experience in different fields. It's always great.
So if you have any questions, please send them to Christian and he will answer them.
Yeah, or like you can also propose yourself and I ask the questions and
for sure
others can ask, because of course I have a lot to share, but I'm really also interested in what other people have to share, other people's stories. It's always very, very inspiring and helpful.
I think that's how we grow, and to be honest, that's why I started this podcast for learning from other people and hopefully share that with others as well.
Yeah, actually, I think it's great. I mean, it's every time. I mean, there are a lot of podcasts like yours out there, but it's always like, I mean, you never listen to all the episodes, but like sometimes, and it gives us the opportunity often to listen to a person, maybe from Twitter or from somewhere else, and you get suddenly in a podcast like this some insights you didn't know about that person. And this is then the moment where you say, oh, wow, he did that. And I did something similar. And then you see you're on the right track, or you think about what you can do next. It's really great. Absolutely.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. That's about it. Thank you so much for joining the podcast. And dear listener, thank you for listening to the show. And we'll definitely speak on Twitter, maybe daily, for instance.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for the invitation. And it was a great chat. Thank you.
Okay. Well, have a great day, and speak with each other soon. Bye bye.
Yeah, you too. Bye.